Good morning, Anna. Yeah, welcome to a blustery Farnborough here in Hampshire. The rain hasn't arrived, which is good, because we're standing outside with Guillaume Faury. He is the CEO of Airbus. Guillaume, always a pleasure.
My pleasure,
Thank you for joining us this morning. Look, this is an air show. Normally, you and I spend our time in these conversations talking about the big orders you've managed to achieve. Where are they this time? This feels like a quiet show.
It's a quiet show in terms of orders, but as you know, we have large backlogs. And we have by far more demand than supply, so the challenge for us is being able to ramp up, to produce, to deliver, and there's a lot of conversations around those themes.
How frustrated are your customers about where we are right now? Kind of, what are they telling you? What are those conversations behind the closed doors looking like at the moment?
Well, it's not behind closed doors. I think they're quite vocal on the fact that they need the planes. They need us to do the ramp-up, to deliver our planes. They have a strong demand. So it's a quite unique situation for them, and we are not completely able to satisfy their expectations. So that's the priority for us. Work with the supply chain, find the ways to de-bottleneck the places where we have difficulties. It's here and there, and that's something that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. But we're moving forward. We are ramping up. Not exactly at the pace we wanted, but not far from.
I was talking to Tim Clark yesterday of Emirates. Tim Clark, he was struggling to understand why this industry is still not able to manage its supply chain story. You get a couple of years after the pandemic has passed, but actually, why are we still here? Why are we still in the situation where the supply chain is causing the issues? What is it unique about this sector that is causing this to happen?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember what happened during the pandemic. We had to reduce very significantly the production rates. And part of the supply chain was idle for 1, 2, 3 years sometimes. Then restarting this supply chain post-pandemic and going from a rather low level of production to a much higher in a short period of time is difficult. A lot of skilled people have left the industry. We have to hire new people. The supply chain has to hire new resources and train the people, educate them, qualify them on the job. At times of inflation.
So it's still a people issue. It's not. That's where the problem largely lies.
There are multiple problems, but I think bottom line it's about onboarding people, training them, and ramping up the quality, the safety, and the quantity of what we're doing at the same time. And that takes time. We have thousands of suppliers, and when you have just a couple of them, few of them that are late on the ramp up, well, that's slowing down everybody, and that's what we've been facing earlier this year.
How much longer does it last for?
It will last for a few years because we are in this ramp-up. So we are trying to find a good balance between the very strong demand and the ability of the supply chain to do the ramp-up. So we're pulling as much as we can, but we have to be reasonable on what we do and adapt to the up and downs that we're seeing in the supply chain. That's what we're doing.
Porsche this morning flagging shortages of aluminium. You've not got shortages. You talk about the labour. There's not shortages elsewhere. You're not short of materials. You're not short of...
We had earlier last year and the year before issues with... raw material, that was more steel for our industry last year. On aluminium, we've been okay. I'm not aware of any shortage of aluminium for aerospace at the moment, but we have to monitor those kind of things. It's not just aerospace that is ramping up. We have other industrial sectors and sometimes ramping up in certain mix of raw material, of activities, of equipment. We had 2 years ago the crisis on the microchips that was resolved 2 years ago. So it's a very dynamic environment. It's volatile, a lot of changes, international disruptions, and we have to navigate those challenges.
You talk about the strong demand that your customers are seeing right now. We're starting to see signs of that demand beginning to slow down a little bit, particularly in the short-haul market. You're seeing it in the United States. Ryanair yesterday out signalling it here in Europe as well. You've been pushing your narrow-body fleet to a position where you think you'll be able to produce 75 aircraft a month. Is 75 going to be necessary? If demand slows down more significantly, do you think you're actually going to need to get there?
Yeah, for us, the need to go to 75 remains. We have by far more demand than our ability to supply on our single aisle. So if there is a bit of softening of the market, that's no problem for us. We would be able to advance a bit of the planes that are on demand. Today we have to refuse orders because we are not able to deliver in the time frame that is requested. So we feel rather protected, if I may say so, from those up and downs of the market.
In terms of that narrow body, the A320 family, you've brought here to Farnborough the XLR. Just been certified, huge step forward for the company to be able to signal that kind of box has been ticked. What next for that family? This is the core of the global aviation sector. What comes next for that sector? Are you going to change the wings on the aircraft, make it more efficient? Are there incremental changes you can make to that family?
I like your impatience, Guy. But when it comes to the A320 family, we have a new member in the family that is the A321 XLR, as you said, and that brings us close to the wide-body business. It opens a lot of new possibilities for airlines, and the challenge for us now is not very much on the product, it's on the ramp-up of the production system. That's why we are building additional final assembly lines. We are transforming the production system from A320 to full A321. We will have 10 final assembly lines for the product around the world, 2 in the US, 6 in Europe, 2 in China. So that's what's next on the agenda for us. It's really ramping up the production system and delivering those planes.
I've been asking this question for the last few years, but I actually feel now we're at the point where we might need an answer soon. And that is, when does the 320 family life cycle come to an end? When do you think you have to make a decision if you're going to get the next generation, the much more fuel-efficient next generation of narrow bodies into the air by, let's say, mid-2030s? When do you need to make that decision?
So actually, we're really in that phase of developing the technologies for the next generation, the product that will replace the A320 family. We want to be able to make the decision by the end of this decade for an entry into service of the successor in the second half of the next decade. That's the time frame.
So by the end of this decade, you have to make that decision. With 2020,
we want to be in a position to make that decision. Then we will adapt with the situation, with the environment at this very moment. But as you know, we're committed to decarbonization of the sector. We want to be carbon neutral by 2050, and we believe that the successor of the A320 is a very important piece to that puzzle. So we really want to be in a position to make the decision by the end of this decade.
You mentioned the assembly lines you have in the United States. Do those assembly lines insulate Airbus from a second Trump presidency, do you think? There's already talk of significant tariffs.
We are a big manufacturer in the US that plays a big role in the equation. We have one assembly line for the A320. We have an assembly line for the A220 in the US, in Alabama, in Mobile, Alabama, and we are building a second assembly line for the A320. So we are a large manufacturer of commercial airplanes in the US, and indeed that plays a big role in the equation.
What about what is happening in France right now? How much concern does that give you? The political story in Paris is chaotic, and we're all trying to understand what the implications are for France, not but just for France, but also for the whole of the European Union. The whole of Europe is going to be affected by what happens in France.
It's important for us to have visibility, to have predictability, to be able to have the main countries of Europe working together in our activities, defense, space. These are sovereign activities for Europe. And indeed, we don't like uncertainty, and what's happening in France at the moment is a bit of a concern. So we are
a bit of a concern.
We are expecting government clarity and a way forward as soon as possible.
But is this are you directly impacted, or is this? Do you expect any direct impact? I.e., new French government talks about Airbus, changes the way that Airbus can operate in France, or is it just a uncertainty at the core of Europe means that there's less decision-making, less quick decision-making in terms of kind of how the industrial story develops on this side of the Atlantic?
There's no direct impact for us, but it's more of the latter, meaning we need the ability to have political decisions, to have a political environment that is able to navigate the challenges that the region has. So it's nothing direct, but more indirect impact for us.
In terms of where we are with the economy right now, some data seeming to suggest that we are seeing a slowdown. We referenced earlier on what was happening with the slowdown that some of the narrow-body carriers, the Ryanairs of this world, are seeing. What do you see in terms of demand going forward? Does it remain as strong as it is right now? Do you see an economic slowdown coming in our future? Europe is kind of growing slowly at the moment. There's signs maybe of a slowdown in the United States. What is your estimate of kind of what the economic picture looks like right now?
Just to be clear, we don't see a slowdown in the demand for commercial airplanes. There's maybe a bit of softening of the acceleration of the pace, but it's increasingly important. We see that the estimation for the forecast for the fleet is again a doubling in the next 15 to 20 years. So the demand around the world for flight is really increasing, and that's what we're serving. So we don't see it as a recession. It continues to be an increase.
Well, that takes me on beautifully to my final question, which is, you talk about a doubling, you talk about this huge amount of demand, you talk about this insatiable appetite for aircraft. Does the infrastructure exist to provide that? Does the fuel infrastructure exist? Will it exist to provide that? Europe is struggling this summer with ATC issues, with airport issues. We can build lots of aeroplanes, but are we building the kit that serves the aeroplanes, the fuel that fuels the aeroplanes? And I'm just wondering whether or not there are now limiting factors beginning to creep into the market, which may subdue the demand that you're talking about.
Well, there's always some local situation here and there, but globally the aviation system is growing. It continues to grow fast. Aviation is an industry where you don't need a lot of infrastructure to provide the service. You need an airport at the takeoff, at the departure, and an airport at the arrival.
But you need air traffic control in the middle, and you need fuel to put those...
Which we have. So we are very far from having saturated the skies. Even in Europe here, you see the sky is empty. So there's plenty of room to grow.
Quite close by.
And the infrastructure is the air. So we are benefiting from a natural infrastructure that is there, which is not the case for other means of transport. So we are just at the beginning of aviation. We need to get organized, and of course there are bottlenecks here and there in the growth, but there's still a lot of potential for growth.
Guillaume, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for stopping by to see us.
My pleasure.
Here at Farnborough. Thank you very much. Guillaume Faury, the CEO of Airbus. Guys in the studio, in the warm studio, back to you.